Welcome to the premiere edition of Cosmic Interviews. And you are the first interviewee. Stormy, welcome to the show. Stormie Grace, talk to us. Who are you?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all, because you've come over to my cyber house. And
yeah, I actually have a bone to pick with you. What's the name? What's your cyber house? Tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll tell you the bone I have to pick with you.
Okay, beautiful. So I have a channel on YouTube, and it's just Stormie Grace Astrology. But in the cyber house is where we have the eat and greets. So we eat a little something and talk about astrology topics, present them to the community, share some space. It's delicious. So I mean, what could you possibly be bony about that?
Lack of food.
Yeah.
The only reason why I accepted the invitation. I mean, look, I know you, I like you, but the real reason I accepted the invitation, I have a Cancer moon, was for the food.
Yeah.
And there was none. And then you asked me a second time, and I totally forgot that this was all about eating. And there I am, like, you know, with my glass of water, feeling like I'm on a fast. So
yes, well, we'll consider that you were just on a fast at that time.
Right.
And you'll have to come back with a real dish. We have to do this in person so that we can like cook a little something and talk while we cook and eat. And
that would be wonderful someday post-COVID.
Post-COVID.
So tell us a little bit about your relationship with astrology.
It is as twisted and kinky and wonderful and scary as everything else in my life. And it, came to me just from the time that I was very young. It was never a learning of astrology for me. It was always a relearning or a calling back and a listening. So when I interact with astrology and I pull a chart, it is like listening to music or to a song, and every chart has its own vibe, and it's interesting to interact with it that way. But I've always used it, even when I was younger and didn't understand. I've always used it as a way in. I never really thought it was telling me about exactly what was going on outside. I mean, the vibrations of what was happening around me, yes, but I always thought it was a way in, and it turns out as I got past the Saturn return, that was accurate.
Yeah, and it really is that, which incidentally is why I'm calling this little ditty that we're doing interviews rather than interviews.
Yeah.
And how long was it from the time that you kind of really decided that astrology was something you wanted to dig into until you began actually looking at charts or even doing charts for money?
It was, oh my gosh, 15, 20 plus years. I mean, it took a really long time because
it's not fair. You don't look old enough to have that behind you.
Well, I will tell you, I have an almost 18-year-old, so I qualify.
There you go.
But it was, it was just so natural and a part of my life from the time that I was younger. And I didn't start my official practice charging people until 8 years ago now. So, and that was very exciting and scary, but I did a lot of life in there. I had children, I got married a couple of times. I did formal education and I worked in radio as a DJ. So I did a lot that wasn't really looking like astrology, although astrology guided that. And then
Right.
I said, this is it, and took the jump. And it was a jump.
And when you took that jump, what was it like doing the first few charts, or did you kind of ease into it by doing charts for friends and family and,
Yeah, well, I want to say that I eased into it, but apparently my version of ease into it was quite loud because I started on YouTube and just started with a couple videos, and I realized that I wanted a lot of practice to make sure I really, really had it before I started to charge.
Mhm.
So I put out in a YouTube video that if you wanted to have your chart done, contact me. So I immediately had access to about 300 people to do their charts. So within the first 6 6 months, I had an abundance of practice. And so by the time I started charging at the end of that year, I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm in.
Got it. So how do you as an astrologer spend your time? Where is it that your time goes in your dance with astrology? How much time do you spend seeing clients, reading books, avoiding work, whatever?
Well, I'm a heavy Venus ruled chart, so I like a lot of downtime and comfortable things. So I spend a lot of time actually eating truly and reading charts or reading books, or, people will bring snacks to a session with me now, which I really appreciate. But I do spend a fair amount of my time seeing clients one-on-one and then making content for either YouTube or the podcast or things on Patreon as well. And then last year really kicked up my speaking and writing and putting more things out. So it's actually an interesting time as we're here in the Aquarian zone, and I have to figure out how I'm spending my social time. Thank God Saturn has shown up to swat some of it out. And I'll let you know at the end of the year how I'm really spending my time, because right now it's a lot of, oh my God.
And on Patreon, how do people find you on Patreon?
Just look up Stormie Grace Astrology.
That's it.
That's it.
That's pretty straightforward. Is it patreon.com/Stormie Grace Astrology?
Yes.
All one word?
All one word.
How boring. No,
how boring.
Actually, no, just so you don't take that wrong. My Patreon is patreon.com/Rick Levine Astrologer.
Okay, we'll see.
All one word.
Just get to it. You got to just get to it, and it's neat because last year was my first year even like stepping into the Patreon zone. I've been really big and really developed my platform on YouTube, and I have a great love for it. So I have like one cute tier right now on my Patreon, but that is in its expansion this year as well. So more to come.
So I want to talk a little bit about doing charts for real, but before we get there, I know that that you got something special cooking, and I only know that because you convinced me to be part of it. And so I would like to, hear a little bit from you about your idea of YouTube Academy, Astrology YouTube Academy, which is, I guess that's actually YouTube Astrology Academy, or maybe it's Academy Astrology YouTube. I don't know, whatever order you'd like.
Okay.
But what you're doing or what you're planning on doing is a little bit different than what many other people have done, and I'd like you to share it with us because I think some of the people here might be interested in this also.
Yes, it's actually, and Uranus is in Taurus, and I am a Taurus, so I have been being shaken, not stirred by all of these new awakenings. And this is a very new awakening for me. But I saw last year in 2020, people were saying we have these areas of astrology that are underserved. Other people were saying, I want to study, I'm committed, I've got the books, but I just can't afford it. Then you throw in a pandemic. And I thought, yeah, what could I do? How can I be of service to this community this year? So I lobbed a big old Uranian blob out there, and my project idea is to suspend teaching all of my private group classes for the year, and instead I'm going to teach them live and free on YouTube, so just right in public. So from the ground
Wait. Live and free go on
in public, which means if you can access YouTube, you can click in and have the lesson. And we are genuinely starting from the ground up. Like, what housing system? What does that mean? Why would you use that? And we will build. So every month you get a lesson. It's live, it's free. There's homework because I'm like that. And then you also get a master or mentor teacher to come deep in that lesson, give you another perspective, give you another
Is that
view.
where
That's where you come in.
Now, the good news is, and I'm going to let you say more about this in just a moment, but from my perspective, you're doing this for over a 12-month period. That's your initial commitment, to basically have a topic each month. and to do your teaching on it, and then to bring in a master expert, someone else to give another perspective on it to fit in with your curriculum. And from my perspective, from your perspective, this is a 1-year commitment. From my perspective, it's a 1-day commitment.
Yes.
Tell everyone about that.
Yes, so that's true. So I'll be there all year. You're stuck with me all year long. But every month you do get a different master teacher who comes in and will bring their perspective and their teachings and, something to just help take that concept or that theory a little bit deeper. Because, the nice thing about it is when you get another perspective, you get another perspective. And
that's why you're here for my patrons, by the way, is so that they can get another perspective. It's exactly, it's exactly that reason. Can you give us an idea of who some of the other, obviously, I'm committed to do a month, and I think we agreed that the month that I'll be doing will be a month where you'll be talking about aspects. Since, as my patrons know, I'm a total aspect geek. I actually believe that everything in astrology is based on aspects. I mean, it's almost overstated, but not quite. That pretty much everything can come out of the sacred geometry of aspects. Can you give us an idea of some of the other topics and some of the other astrologers that have committed to participating for a month?
Yes, absolutely. So because we're going from the ground up, we've got everything, like I said, from the housing system. Gemini Brett will be stepping in to do an astronomy 101 class to actually get us back to the sky. And before we bring it to paper so that you can see and feel, what is it that you're actually looking at? Christopher Renstrom stepping in, Christina Caudell, Nadia Shah, Kathy Rose will be coming over, and she comes from the Noel Till line, which I absolutely love. Ali Gully.
These are some of my favorite people. And although I never took I never took Noel Till's courses, that Noel was the first real astrologer that I ever met and ever heard give a talk. And I'm going to try to give you a year on this. I think this was about 1974. And I've had a very long and strange relationship with Noel, but I really respect not only his contribution to astrology, because a lot of moderners don't understand that in the 70s, Noel was one of the people that actually shook astrology, by its jugular vein, turned it upside down, whacked it on its butt, and watched it breathe its first breath in its newer incarnation of psychologically oriented. None of us saying he's the only one. But and I didn't mean to. Actually, every name that you said, I wanted to interrupt you with a story. Like you said, Gemini Brett and I have had an ongoing little thing. Actually, he has actually sat right over here in this chair, but he used to live in Seattle, and so we would get together and create mischief. But I went on record once telling him that I refused to call him Gemini.
Why?
Because if you met someone who was a tall person, you would call them a person, you wouldn't call them tall. And that Gemini Brett, his name is Brett, and Gemini is the adjective, it's the descriptor. Okay. And so I would not call him Gemini, I would call him Brett. I don't mind calling him Gemini Brett, but if I'm going to call him by his name, it's not Gemini. It's like calling someone blue or tall or any other descriptor. Anyhow. And the funny thing is that a day or two after I had this discussion with him, kind of being an Aries jerk that I can be sometimes, a couple of days after we had that discussion, he was notified by Facebook that he couldn't use Gemini Brett. He had to use his real name. So I think in some ways he blames me. I just noticed it looks like I have a corona. It looks like I have a crown coming out of my head,
Yes.
which
And
is
a
very
phoenix next to you as well. So it's a pure
well.
situation.
Well, actually, the phoenix is actually a flying dragon, and these are things that come from Bali. That's called the Dewi. They're good luck in Bali. And the thing that's actually a mobile that spins around. But I don't think I ever sat in such a way that it gave me this crown of thorns, or maybe a imperial crown or something.
That's okay.
Anyhow, back to Christopher Renstrom, another wonderful Nadia. These are all, I mean, Kathy Rose. Who else?
Yes, we've got Christina Caudell, Melissa LaFara, Bill Duvendeck will be on board, Sam Reynolds, who is my buddy, and Michael Bartlett. So S.J. Anderson, let's not forget him because he's my new friend.
Got it. Well, I don't know how many of them you just listed, but I'd say that I know all but a few of them very well. And what a group to put together, and how exciting for you to have, them participating in your show, and them and me too, all being able to reach another group of people that will be getting this for free. So here's the question. If you're doing this, and this is quite a venture, because you have commitments from other people, and you have expenses, and you have, putting material together, how the hell are you going to pay for it?
Yeah, well, this is why we Kickstart, which the year of Aquarius, the community and the astrologer come together. So we Kickstart. So it's this neat concept where I say, here's my project. If you feel like you can get behind that, you donate. And even if you can't donate, if you just share the project, we've got 18 days to go. Share the project. If anybody you know is interested in something like this, donate. We crowdfund it, and then we go out and make this magic happen. But it's an all or nothing thing. It's all or nothing.
So that means we have to reach the $30,000, which is the minimal amount that you need to jump in, commit, and make it all happen. And once that's reached, then everything that you do that appears on YouTube will be free for anyone who wants to watch it. And even if they can't attend the live version, it's then on YouTube that becomes basically a public record of teaching structure for people who want to take a course. And so it's really wonderful because it really reaches people who otherwise would not be able to, afford to attend a course or a class like that.
Absolutely. And it's cool because that's not the end of it. Like, we have these people, and I know forever I was one of them where I was studying and just never kind of took the leap. But so since there are over 100,000 people out there available to watch this, there's no way I could handle all of that myself. So within the Kickstarter, within the astrology community, I'll be hiring paid teaching assistants. So they get an opportunity to create an income stream this year from all that dang astrology that they learned. And the best way to learn it is to teach it, right? So I'm like, get out here, you guys, paddles in the water.
So if someone does want to, contribute, either $1 or $10 or $1,000, depending upon what their ability and interest is, they just need to go to your Kickstarter page.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure that you have the link. You can post.
No, actually, I'll make it easier than that. The link will be, let me point. The link will be right. The mirror, the image of the cameras are always backwards. So I can't tell. There I am. Yeah. The link will be right there.
Beautiful.
I'll put the link up for anyone. So, so that's it. I wanted to basically cover that, but now I want to. Is there anything else you need to say on that before we move on?
Just that it's also, there's subtitles in it as well, because we're not limiting it to the English speaking community. So truly, if people want to learn astrology this year, that's not going to be a barrier. We've got subtitle people on board as well. And
it's not only people who want to learn astrology right now, it's also people who want to get the word of astrology out into the public. And so it's really it's really, there's a public service aspect to this.
We really are trained. We're not sitting around here oming ourselves into some sense of what's going on.
So let me shift gears completely now. and let's talk about doing charts for a minute, because I would like to give my patrons a little bit of your experience, your knowledge, because now you are the master coming into my arena, and my students, I imagine, at some point in time get tired of hearing me saying the same old stuff. So my question to you is, when you look at a chart, what's the first thing you think? What's the first thing you do? Why do you even look at charts?
Well, I look at charts so we can have the conversation about what are some solutions, right? What are some solutions? You're looking for guidance maybe for something. So let's see what the solutions are. Let's see where you can go. How do you evolve with this? I think that that's the idea in Soul School, is have an evolution, have a different experience. If you've had the same one 10,000 times, let's maybe look at where your ideas are not playing out well, and we can choose a different solution that is activated from the chart.
So when you look at a chart, where do you go? What are some of the first considerations that you might make when you're looking at a chart and there's all these circles and planets and houses and lines and whatever? Yeah, I would say there's lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So where do you go?
Yep, the very first places that I go immediately, as I like to look at what you can see, be practical. What's the first impression? And this very much so comes from the till line, but I look at the hemisphere analysis and I make that analysis and break that down. And also, do you have unaspected planets? Do you have planets that are, what's your oriental planet situation?
Okay, let's take this one second.
I get so excited.
No, this is good. So you look at the hemispheric emphasis or preponderance or lacking of.
Absolutely.
And how do you look at the hemispheres? Obviously, we're talking any planets above the hemisphere are in the southern hemisphere, because when we look at a chart, it's the opposite of a road map, because when we're looking at a road map, we're looking down, and when we're looking at a chart, we're looking up. And so it becomes flipped, so that east is west and north is south. So when you look at a chart, and let's say there's a whole ton of planets that are above the horizon in the southern hemisphere, what does that tell you?
Provided they are not retrograde, because if they're retrograde, we're going to shoot it all back downstairs. But if there's a whole bunch of planets upstairs, the first thing I'm going to know is that this person is likely going to be quite lively in what they do, whether they are doing it or not. The call will be to be upstairs, but to remember, they've got to find some tethering. They've got to find some grounding, because the story with Southern Hemisphere heavy people is like, the world is making decisions for me. The world is pushing me around. I feel like, right? And we'll get these statements out of people, and it's like, no, let's find the tether. Where do we tether? So that's the first thing I'm going to take a sense of and start to get the story.
I like the word tether. It's one of my favorite words.
Oh, is it?
yeah. It's and untethered, which many of us are. And so with the emphasis now that is beneath the horizon, that's in the northern hemisphere, that's, as you like to say, downstairs. What do we say to that person?
This place, I'm like, what are you doing down here? This is so beautiful. You have gorgeous roots, but you've got to shoot up there. You've got to grow. Let's get you out of here. Because then the story is, oh, I feel obligated to my family for this. I feel obligated to my ancestry, my history. It's like a two-tethered.
Now isn't what you're saying now? This brings up a much deeper issue that we're not going to have time to really go into today.
Okay.
But you're saying, I'm looking at a chart and it's all down here, so I'm telling them to go up there. Aren't you telling them to do something or be something that's not in their chart? Wouldn't it be another approach for you to say, you're down here, how do you furnish this down here? How do you make this down here the best down here that it can be? And I'm not saying that one way's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is a discussion that astrologers seem to have.
This is a good discussion, I think, too. And it's not my first time encountering that question. And make the downstairs as comfy as possible, but you've got to get out of the downstairs. What if the person feels like they don't have there's no stairs and there's no ladder and they can't find a rope and they don't even have windows to know that there's really light up there? How do you begin to
to work with a client who says, well, that's easy for you to say, you're just throwing these words at me, but I don't have a damn clue as to how to do that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you don't go into a consultation and say, well, your downstairs sucks, get it together. You got to talk and move through that and look at the planets. Where is their help? When is the timing for help? I very much so use the lunar cycles of life as well. So I'm like, you're all right. Stay downstairs. You're very balsamic right now. Chill out.
And when you say lunar cycles, are you talking about progressed moon?
Progressed moon, lunar cycles, the phasing of life. I'm like, at 3.5 years, you've got a thing to work on. So there's a whole conversation that goes with it. But in an immediate glance, I like to take a look at the first impression. What can I
wait,
see?
we're still on the same thing.
Yes.
Eastern horizon. That's the horizon closer to the ascendant. When you're looking at the chart, it's the left. On a regular map, it would be the California side of the US, not the New York side, which is west, which confuses the hell out of people. But let's say now we have a chart with all the planets on the left side.
Yeah, on the left, you're the hustler. This is the hustler hemisphere. I love this because in this hemisphere, that person is going to do what has to be done for them to rise, for them to be out there, to fit their mission, their cause, whatever it is. And there are some circumstances with some Eastern heavy charts that look like the person would be down, but the hustler hemisphere gets up. I mean, it is fantastic sometimes to watch heavy Eastern placements, but they're going to go make a space for themselves somewhere in the world. But how do we do that without forgetting that we also have to have the influence of other people's voices?
Right. So now what about the Western emphasis?
Yeah, heavy West. Immediately, I'm like, okay, heavy West, you're going to need to relationship in this life a lot, but you can't lose your voice. You cannot get drowned in your own, in everything else. You've got to hold your own over there. That's the thing about polarities, right? The polarities even apply in hemispheres. Like we've got to have the balance, and you can't. It's like this, they're tied. They both inform each other.
Now, what about charts that have an equal amount in upstairs, downstairs, left side, right side?
Yeah, the very first thing I'm going to do if I see something that appears to be equal is I'm going to look for those retrograde planets, because a retrograde planet's going to send the energy to another side. So I'm going to take a look at that. But if you're just splayed out there, balanced, living your best life, good for you. Let's move on to what's next.
One last question on this, and then we're going to move on, or actually move away, because we probably have already gone well over our cosmic quickie short time. What about charts where you see a cluster, not in one hemisphere, but in one quadrant, where you have everything that's downstairs and in California, downstairs and to the left, or upstairs and to the right? Or what about a chart where you see all the where you see two empty quadrants, where you have like a seesaw effect, where you have all the planets, let's say lower right and upper left? How do you go about working with those charts?
Yeah, most of the time, instead of just breaking them into quadrants, I will still keep them for me in the hemispheric analysis and look at, are you Southern, Eastern, are you whatever, and we'll tell that story. And I have found that in my practice, by not having to just isolate the quadrant, I've actually been able to pull more from the entire hemisphere story. And it's worked a little bit better in my case studies and my practice. So we'll tell the whole story, but there's going to be a focus in that house as well that we'll have the conversation about it. But I work it a bit more into that hemispheric story than just the quadrant.
Cool. Well, I don't even remember what the other three things were that you said. We only got into one of them, but that's a good dropping. It's a good, it's a good morsel of information for people to hear that. It is a technique, incidentally, that I use and I teach. I language it a bit differently, but it will not be a strange concept to any of my patrons or to any of the people who are in my chart interpretation classes, because often that is something I look at. However, it's not necessarily the first thing I look at. And so I'm going to think about that. So I appreciate your input.
Look at what you can see.
Yeah.
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stormy, this has been a lot of fun. It feels like it was way too fast. But I appreciate you stopping by to my house this time. And let's do it again. Thank you very much. And we shall be in touch.
Okay. Thanks for having
And
me.
don't forget, Kickstarter.
Down below.
All right.
Or
Bye.
above. All right. I will see you next time. Bye, sir.